Welcome to our latest installment of ABL Advisors video series featuring thought leaders from the commercial finance industry. Joining me today as a guest host is Sue Burry, the CEO of First West Background Due Diligence. Sue is recognized as a national due diligence expert in business risk and mitigation and possesses over 25 years of experience in broadcast and digital media, having most recently launched Business On Media, where she is a featured host of the Business On videocast featuring Sue Burry. Thanks for joining us today, Sue.
It's a pleasure to be here with both of the mics today. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest for today, Mike Sharkey, president of Fifth Third Business Capital. Mike recently announced he will be retiring at the end of September after a 40-year career as a leading executive in the asset-based lending industry. We are very pleased to have Mike join us today. Thanks for being here today, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
It's our pleasure. With that, actually, I'd like to start right in, Mike, on a few questions for our audience. Mike, throughout your career, you've established and managed numerous successful ABL businesses, including Stanchart Business Credit, LaSalle Business Credit, called Taylor Business Capital, and NB Business Capital. How would you describe your experiences starting up these businesses throughout the years?
Well, actually, I think the first startup I was involved with was with Manufacturers Hanover back in 1980. So I left GE. I'd been working at GE as a field examiner and a loan officer. And I followed one of those BDOs, one of those salespeople from GE over to Manufacturers Hanover to start up a Chicago office for Manufacturers Hanover Commercial Corporation, which and it's a Joe Policino had started that company up right around the time I joined them. And we did pretty well. We traded off the reputation of those two sales reps and the Manufacturers Hanover name. So that actually went pretty well. And around the time that Manny Hanny was buying CIT, 1984, I guess, I was really wanting to be a regional credit manager. I was a little bit of your typical impatient young person. So having been through one startup, I thought I'd try it again. I wasn't afraid of the fact that I was going to be joining another startup. And that's when I joined Stanchart Business Credit, which was owned by Standard Chartered Bank. And the difference there really was no name recognition, right? So we spent about 10 years hiring people, building our reputation, building the portfolio. And really the key was getting the right people, which at the time we weren't that familiar with. I wasn't that familiar with the market. So the people was really key. I remember I was at a talk that was given by Larry Bossidy back in the day at GE Capital. And he said that the head of any organization the president should really be the head of player personnel. And I kind of took that to heart and have taken that to heart throughout my entire career. So we were fortunate, we got good people. Another important part of doing a startup is you really can't afford to have any catastrophic losses, in those formative years. And we were very fortunate not to have any catastrophic losses. I don't think we had any losses to speak of in that 10-year period. When LaSalle bought Stanchart, which is how I got from Stanchart to LaSalle, it wasn't really a startup, but we grew the company from 800 million, I think, in loans to about 12 billion. LaSalle had a terrific name. We helped them build that into a national name. We also, there was also a big ramp up in technology, and we used technology to our advantage. We've always used technology to our full advantage to be more efficient. So that was a really good run until LaSalle was sold. And when LaSalle was sold, I had to kind of do my third startup, which we found a new home at Cole Taylor, small bank, $6 billion bank in Chicago, and built it into a national ABL. And we had a much easier time of it because I had 238 employees to choose from the last place. We knew the market inside and out. The market knew us. And really, the way you can get in trouble in this business is by hiring people, the wrong people, and doing business with the wrong people. So that's really what makes startups tough. I mean, when I did the one at Stanchart, I think I was 30 years old. I joined the company in 1984 and I think I was running it by 1987. And all of us were very young and we were kind of feeling our way. You know, we were kind of figuring it out as we went. But once we got to Cole Taylor, we kind of had it all figured out. So we grew the company rapidly. It got transitioned over to MB and now finally to Fifth Third. So, but again, people's the key. I mean, the landscape is littered with companies that tried to get into our business and hired the wrong people or did business with the wrong companies and didn't last very long, like Whirlpool and Westinghouse and Borg Warner. I mean, there's a pretty long list of companies that saw the returns, got enamored with it, tried to get into it, essentially hired the wrong people, and we're in and out of the business very quickly. So I've been very fortunate that I've worked with and have found a lot of really, really good people that we've spent a lot of time together over the years.
Okay, great. And Sue, I think you wanted to step in.
Yeah, and Mike, you touched on this. You talked about people being the most important. Besides the people, are there other things that are important when seeking to build a successful team as you have done so many times?
Well, I think the key to building a successful team, and I don't mean this to sound callous, but we don't tolerate marginal performance very well. I think we've probably had a small handful of people that work for us for about a month. And I personally was involved in all the hiring. Usually you realize pretty quickly if you made a mistake based on productivity or quality of work. And we tend to deal with those very rapidly, shockingly rapidly actually, which I think is fair to everybody. But I think having said that, most of our people have been with us for decades. Some of them go back to the Stanchart days. My credit manager, one of my credit managers here in Chicago, and I were field examiners together back in the day, back in the late 70s. The key is you have to be fair, you have to be transparent, and you have to have success. I think the reason our people have been with us for so long is that we have been fortunately so successful. And anytime if you've ever worked anywhere where the company wasn't growing or doing particularly well and you were worrying about, not about your promotions, but just about the company's stability, we've been very fortunate that we've been very stable and we've shown great growth and profitability.
Competition is fierce in the ABL industry. What's most important to borrowers from your perspective when seeking to establish a relationship with a lender? And has this changed a lot throughout your career?
Competition has always been fierce, right? In our industry, it is, well, as it always will be, very fierce, which is fine. I mean, that means it's a healthy industry. There are a lot of players in the market looking for deals. I think the key, though, has always been advocacy. That's what made the first startup so difficult. Nobody knew who we were. It took us a while to build our reputation, right? Our reputation is for being prudently aggressive, thinking outside the box, and I think most importantly, being fair and reasonable under fire. So when there's a problem, you want everybody to realize you want to have the reputation in the market as being fair and reasonable in those situations. Those are qualities that get noticed by those key partners, what we call our key partners, the accountants, the turnaround professionals, the managers themselves. You want to maintain that reputation for being reliable and reasonable and fair. So those key partners will then send you their referrals. They'll advocate for you on deals as they're coming up. So that's a big part of our mantra, is that you just have to treat everybody well and fairly, so that when someone asks about you, when they're looking or evaluating banks and proposals tend not to be terribly different from each other. It really boils down to that reputation and that advocacy.
Mike, what's been most rewarding to you personally throughout your professional career?
I think it's the, I think what's been most rewarding for me is the success, really the stability and the opportunities that we've given to our employees and their families. Many of us have grown up together. Many of us have grown old together, I guess. And that, to me, that's what's most satisfying. I mean, the loyalty and the tenor of the people that work together at this company, I'm sure it will hold together as they move forward after I've retired. The other thing that I'm proud of is the way that we've dealt with our customers. The true test of how fairly you've treated people or and your customers is if they still like you and thank you, even when you've been through some rough times, maybe even a liquidation or a sale of the company. And I think that's what I really feel good about. I don't think there are too many people walking around the planet saying that we didn't treat them fairly or that they weren't happy with us or liked us. We tried to work with people to a fault. Nobody throws good money after bad. But normally if someone was willing to, believed in their story and wanted to support it, we try and find a way to support them too.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the insights there. And now I'm going to turn a little bit more to the personal side a little bit, if I can. And that is, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about, now that you're going to be retiring from Fifth Third, and can you tell us anything about what your future plans might be and what you're going to be doing going forward?
I was going to retire a couple of years ago, and then the sale to Fifth Third was announced, and I didn't want to leave during all that transition. I wanted to make sure our business was understood and that people were properly taken care of. And then late last year, I guess early this year, I told my boss that I wanted to talk about transition and retirement when I got back from spring break, and I went out west to go to a ball game or two in Arizona. And COVID hit, and I never came home. I kept working from Arizona, and so it just kind of kept getting delayed and delayed, and I finally just decided it was time, and that I would figure it out as I go. We have a beautiful home in Sedona, and I'm involved with a couple of charities, and we'll see how it goes. I'm not one of those people who knows exactly what they're going to do when they retire, although I have a lot of friends who've told me there aren't enough hours in the day. So I guess we'll see.
Mike, tell us a little bit more about your favorite charities, your work with HFS Chicago Scholars and the American Brain Tumor Association.
Well, education is very timely, right? I mean, it's I can't think of anything more important than the HFS Chicago Scholars. My wife has been a tutor at inner city schools for decades, and what this organization does is they try and shepherd young people through the education system in Chicago and get them scholarships and try and ensure that they, at the end of the day, they make a living wage, either through high school graduation, through college, or through trade school. But they mentor, they have everybody's got a mentor, and they shepherd these kids to ensure that I think their graduation rate's over 99%. So it's a really good organization. I just joined the board last month, actually, so it's relatively new for me. The other one is the American Brain Tumor Association, which I've been involved with for many, many years. In fact, I used to be the president of the board. Our son had a brain tumor when he was 6 months old. And back in those days, there was no ABTA, and I had to go to the library and do research and try and figure things out pretty much for myself, which actually, well, I guess it turned out okay because our son's 26 years old today, but there are a lot of stories that are not as pleasant. Most of the stories are not as pleasant. And what the ABTA does is they serve as patient advocates. They're the largest repository for information for people to go to figure out what they're dealing with. And they fund research grants at some of the finest cancer institutes in the country. So I think it's important. I think every time I mention to someone that I'm involved with the ABTA, they have a neighbor or a friend or an employee or somebody who's dealing with that problem. And I mean, it's amazing. There was an announcement, I think, last week on my retirement that mentioned the ABTA, and I got 3 phone calls. I got 3 phone calls from people who were dealing with the problem real time, asking me who they could call. So it's a good cause. It's near and dear to my heart, obviously. So yeah, that's the story on the ABTA and the Chicago Scholars. Actually, the Chicago Scholars is having their annual breakfast tomorrow, which is, I think, their biggest fundraiser, which is tough when you can't have breakfast. It's all being done virtually. Anyway,
It's a new world out there. Thanks for telling us a little bit about that personal side. I really do appreciate that. You know, as we wrap up this interview, one of the things I wanted to do is give you an opportunity to see if you had any parting words that you would like to share with your peers and colleagues throughout the years. You've been kind enough to share a lot of thoughts today, but there are any parting words that you would like to say as we conclude the interview?
Well, thank you for having me. And thank you to everyone who sent me such kind and really touching emails. When my announcement went out, I got a stack of emails that I received from people that I've known for all these years. And I guess all I would say to everyone is, whether you're a lender or a service provider to our great industry, just enjoy the ride. I mean, our industry is full of great people, rich experiences, and I would just enjoy everybody I would just suggest that everybody enjoy every minute of it. I certainly did.
That's great to hear, Mike. And, you know, with that, what I'd like to do is wrap this up with you. And thank you very much for joining us today. You know, I'll let Sue speak as well, but we wish you the very, very best, and to you and your family in your retirement. You know, you'll be missed in the industry, but thank you very much for being here with us today. And Sue, thank you also for joining us as a guest co-host for this interview with Mike. And I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, Sue?
Yes, Mike, I just wanted to say it's been an absolute pleasure knowing you through the years. You've been such an inspirational leader in our industry. And I wanted just to do a little shout out to your better half, your beautiful wife, Sue. It's been a pleasure getting to know her at the industry events. I so enjoyed our time together, and I'm thinking of you guys and wishing you just much happiness in the future.
Thank you very much.